Sanctuary was never meant for humankind. It was forged as a refuge from the war between the high heavens and the burning hells. Instead, it became a new battleground in this eternal conflict. A secretive group called the Haradrim has kept mortals safe. But now this once powerful order is a husk of what it was, and Sanctuary's ancient creators have returned to claim the hearts of humankind. This is the story of their downfall.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I bring you something new, my very first game review. I will use a very simple system, a finger-based review, where one finger is not cool and 5 will be awesome. And at the end I will add them up to see a final score, which will be somewhere between 1 and 5. This first review is about Diablo 4, a brand new action RPG from Blizzard. Generally, the Diablo series were regarded as the king of action RPGs, and for a good reason.
The sanctity of this place has been fouled.
The first game came out in 1997, and it was quite a big success. I recall playing a sorceress in it, and after a long time I even managed to beat the game. I remember a lot of firewalls. That was like a very long time ago. Diablo 2 came 3 years after the original, and it was an even bigger success than the first game. It sold nearly 3 million copies in the first year of its release, so you can imagine that it was very popular. The game was a gothic, dark game with a brutally unforgiving late-game progression, as it was the trend at that time. I recall playing that game as a necromancer, and around level 93, which was a big number at that time. I managed to die at one point in somewhere in Act 3, and that wiped out almost 2 weeks of my gameplay experience, so it was unforgiving. Imagine losing 2 weeks of gameplay today just for one test in a game. Those were different times. The game was remastered recently with the higher fidelity graphics. Now, finally everyone can play it, and it looks just as like you remembered it. And the memories usually make things a bit prettier. But you can switch back with one click of a button to see the old graphics. An extremely long 12 years later, Diablo 3 came out. Although originally the game was criticized for being too colorful and looking too much like World of Warcraft, it managed to have quite a good runtime. I myself played it for several thousand hours, mainly as a monk. And it was a very enjoyable game, and later gameplay, as it evolved throughout the years was quite relaxing, at least for me.
Cast off Note the true vision of the Lord of Hell!
At one point they even tried to add the real money auction house where you could buy and sell in-game items, and they had to shut it down eventually. But you know, it was a time of experimenting. Even at that time, Blizzard was trying to make money out of everything. After Diablo 3, we finally can play the new iteration, which is just released a few weeks before this review. And no, we are not talking about Diablo Immortal. That's an abomination and an April Fool's joke, so I refuse to take that into account at any level. Diablo being a role-playing game gives you the choice between a barbarian, a necromancer, a sorceress, a rogue, and a druid. Blizzard is not really breaking new grounds here. These are characters that were available in the previous Diablo games. But the new thing this time around, that once you made your choice, you are fully be able to customize these characters. You can change their skin color, hairstyle, facial hair, gender. You can add tattoos, and you can go deep with making the main character of the game exactly the way you want it to. I think this was a very good choice because you know, it improves the immersion of the game greatly. Diablo 4 released after an invitational alpha, 2 beta tests and the stress tests. They were pretty prepared for launch, and I must say it was fairly smooth. It didn't went. I mean, it was not going without an issue, but it was. You can tell that they practiced it quite a lot. It was significantly more smooth than the launch of Diablo 3.
My companion seems harsh to many, but beneath his bluster and his sword lies a scholar as hungry for knowledge as I am. He knows things I never thought to seek out, and he is generous. Some scholars jealously guard all the things they know. Not him. I have asked that we pass by the statue of revered Tybalt, and though I can see he chafes at such a thing, he has granted my request.
Diablo 4 is an exceptionally great-looking game. The new engine and the tons of work the development team put into it bear the most delicious fruit for your eyes. The textures are gritty, worn, but at the same time clear and crisp and sharp. The foliage is nice. Weather effects, rain, day and night, they create a consistent and well-presented world from beginning to the end. So there are no one particular part that would stick out, so from beginning to the end you will get a very nice audio and visual experience. This is kind of expected for a AAA production done by several hundred people, but still I need to give credits where credit is due. Diablo 4 is a very good game. The attention to details and the professional textures, if we are familiar with game developments, it is using EBR textures, metallics look metal and things like that. So it's the new engine was a very good choice. I really like it. The game runs very well even on older hardware. I wanted to mention that I was running it on my 5-year-old laptop, and I had no major issues with running the game. I usually get around 30-40 FPS depending on where I am. This only goes lower when I'm traveling back to the city due to the multiplayer. I was playing on medium settings more or less, and I was using an NVIDIA 1050 Ti with 16GB of RAM and a Core i7, so it's an older gaming machine, but it had no problems. The overall graphic design was aiming for the oil paintings of the old masters, and I think they managed to nail that very well. Their goal was to kind of reimagine Diablo 2 and not work based on the artistic direction of Diablo 3. I think it was a good choice. The game looks realistic and almost every frame is pleasing to the eye. And the overarching design is present. How they made the game is basically feels like one complete design from beginning to the end. So that's very well executed.
He deserved better than Elias.
I woke this morning to find that Sev has fled our company. She was harrowed by the dreams that haunt us all. I suppose it got to be too much for her. I dislike our remaining companions. The feeling I fear is mutual. Elias insists we need them. The knowledge we seek is well guarded and we cannot fight our way through alone. In the name of knowledge, I must accept them.
The sounds and audio and the game are, predictably well done. I don't really have any bad word for it. It was professionally made, everything is crystal clear, the effects are punchy whenever you are throwing a fireball or crackling a lightning bolt. Then you can literally hear it flying through the air. Your footsteps are in the mud and on stone are audible well and adds a very atmospheric experience. I felt that the music is a bit generic. It's high orchestra compositions with additional choir music added to it. I don't particularly recall anything memorable besides the main theme of Diablo 4, which is very good. I liked it. It basically just brings what it needs to with clarity and precision.
A strange thing, knowing where you'll go when you die. One less damn mystery to worry about, at least. Did I make the right choice? I did what I had to. We needed answers and we got them. Lilith was poised to storm the very gates of hell. Astaroth and the deal, Rathma and the key, it had all been leading to this. But what we didn't know was that while we were lost in the swamp, Inarius and the cathedral were launching a campaign to strike at Lilith. Their battle would leave the world a wasteland. and whoever won would show no mercy to what was left. Our only hope was to reach Lilith before Inaris.
Regarding multiplayer, I'm one of those players who were hoping for a single-player mode for the game, which eventually didn't happen. The game requires constant internet connection, you can't even log in without being connected to Battle.net. Which can be a bit frustrating, especially for older players who remember the time when you didn't actually need a constant internet connection to play a single-player game. But this is not a single-player game, it has forced multiplayer. There are no settings to turn off multiplayer. In cities, the other players' presence are constant, and to be honest, a bit distracting as well, because even if the game would otherwise run well on your system, you will always see a spike of lag and a spike of a lower FPS when you are traveling back to the city because of the other players. You will probably hear forced multiplayer from me a couple of times, and this is what I mean by it. I mean that there are activities in game that are adjusting their difficulty level so they will always be above your level. So you meet with demons and cultists and drowned that will be at least 2 levels above you. This is Blizzard's way to encourage you to team up with other players, and there are activities you cannot do alone, like the world boss. They are literally forcing you to multiplayer, and you have no option to opt out of it. There are these activities, some of them can be done solo, but it takes quite a lot of time and quite a lot of effort and concentration. The endgame activities similarly are tuned for multiplayer, although you can do it solo. It will leave quite a bad taste in your mouth if you see that other players in groups of 4 just going through the battlefield and mowing down everything with ease while you are struggling.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Multiplayer also means that every time you travel back, it will be a slow transition. So, be prepared for that. The game has a PvP system, which I must confess that I have not really tried. I am not really a PvP player. It is called Fields of Hatred, and it's on 3 designated areas throughout the large map, and you can go into these areas as a solo player, and you will basically get a currency there that you can use for PvP related items, but you can't just gather the currency. You need to basically go to a PvP hotspot. The way it works is that you enter an area where monster kills and player kills give you currency that you need to extract at certain points. These are the hotspots, and if you successfully defend the extraction point for a while, you get the currency, or some other player might come here, and if you die, you lose all your currency and even your ears. the PvP yields a trophy of your ear if you lose. But yeah, it's not really my type of gameplay, so I'm not really used that one. Itemization in the game. The game, just like other action RPGs, built heavily on its robust system of items to define player power and skills. The big change from previous entries is that is the ease of which you can get legendary gears. You can modify them, upgrade them, extract them. A nice rare item with good stats can be further upgraded, and if you extracted a legendary power, you can add that to the rare item and it will become a legendary. Although this makes crafting relevant and constantly a useful thing, I feel that this also degrades the value of legendary items somewhat. In Diablo 3, the legendary item was unique and you recognized what you get even from the shape of the item, and it significantly changed the gameplay. Here, it is not so much. Legendary items are good, but they are not particularly changing your gameplay at all. They are not unique. You can take the legendary affix from them and put it to any other item that you choose. I wouldn't even call them game-changing. There's an item category called unique, but I think that's very, very rare. I only found one of those items. On later greater difficulty settings like World Tiers 3 and 4, the item progression will expand with sacred and ancestral items, which are basically just increasing the possible item level and the bonuses on items. And how you upgrade these items is basically going to endgame activities and gather resources there to upgrade better items to even better. It's a grind. Item upgrades are a new thing, and it's coming from Diablo Immoral. And I don't really like them, but at least they are not tied to the item shop, so that's something. In the end game, upgrading items are ridiculously expensive, and materials you need to upgrade them are only coming from limited time end game activities. So farming and grind is very heavily the end game of Diablo 4. The random item attributes are the core of the game, and I think Diablo 4 did a significant step forward from its predecessors. Even though I don't fully agree with all their choices, it's worth mentioning that the looks available without the item shop are limited, and the design seems to be a bit generic, and all this was on purpose. The developers made the freely available legendary items generic, so you are more enticed to go into the item shop and get the unique looks for your character. So that's quite a scummy tactic, and I don't really approve it. Regarding skills, in terms of gameplay mechanics, the game furthers a simple skill tree where you choose your basic skills, core skills, defense. Throughout leveling, you will probably experiment with various combinations and re-specializing in the field of, re-specializing in the field is easy, although, the cost of it goes up over time. So, if you're just starting out, don't be afraid to experiment, try out new combinations, and maybe you will find something that works well for you or works well with your items. After level 50, you get access to a new type of point system, the Paragon boards, which are additional points that you can spend on your character. They will give main attribute bonuses like additional intelligence, additional strength, and small changes to your character. But, this is something that you can push further on even after you finish the game, even if after your character is more or less finished. When you reach the end of the board, you can attach an additional full board, and you can rotate it, and you can fill that one also with points. And it's an interesting system, but introducing it halfway into the game will basically drive you into the end game of Diablo 4. They will introduce this extra point system, so even after the story is finished, you are having some sort of a motivation to continue playing and get more points and make your character more superhero-like.
I had come here certain that I could purge the evil from this place. I believed my faith in my blade could cut through any darkness. But I see now that the light brought us here for a different purpose. These paladins have suffered through much. Though Mephisto may still corrupt this land, his hold over these spirits will cease. That, at least, I can do.
Regarding the story of the game, it's not bad, it's actually pretty good, although my first impressions were that the main story is quite simple. Interestingly, I love the side quests significantly more than the main storyline. To keep it spoiler-free, the story of Diablo 4 is centered around Lilith, who is one of the creators of Sanctuary, the world where you are. And she is summoned back into the world from her exile. And the main quest is to follow her footsteps and trying to prevent whatever she is planning. Initially, she is painted as a figure who wants the betterment of humanity and to prepare humanity for the invasion from hell. But her methods usually come with a ton of bloodshed. And her philosophy is that only the strongest of humans will survive the onslaught of hell. And, it's questionable at best. Throughout your journey, you meet new and old characters, like old friends from Diablo 3, even older enemies from Diablo 2. For me, the main story of Diablo 4 felt a bit disjointed, mainly because of the open world setups. Between main story quests, you are free to roam certain areas, pick up side quests and so on. So by the time I reached the next main story mission, I was kind of forgetting where I was in it. But the side quests were really good, they were interesting. I remember in Diablo 2 Act 2 you meet a little emperor in the sewers, and it turned out that they are the main villain of Act 2, Belial, and it was kind of more streamlined towards starting and finishing an act and centering around one main boss. Here, due to the open world design, it is significantly different. The side quests, I mentioned them earlier, but I wanted to give them an additional point here because they are, I think, the highlight of the game. They give additional stories that are revolving around events in the world. I really like most of them. You can visit, for example, the area where the intro for the game is playing, so that was also very cool to see. And these are usually multi-step quests, so not just a simple one-step side quest, but they lead into other side quests, so it was very well done. Regarding the progression and replayability of Diablo 4, the game was obviously made with a long-term endgame in mind. By the time you finish the main story, your map is full of dungeons you haven't seen yet, although they are a bit samey after a while because they have just a handful of events that can spawn inside them. And the endgame of Diablo 4 is mostly towards PvE activities like Helltide and a new bounty system called Tree of Whispers, and the increasingly difficult dungeon crawling called Nightmare Dungeons. During the Helltide event, a large chunk of the map will turn into a hellscape for an hour, and demons 2 levels above you will appear there. The goal of this activity is to gather enough Helltide currency to open chests around the invaded area. Smaller ones give you smaller rewards, but if you stay alive long enough, you can open a large chest for a better chance. The Tree of Whispers is the new bounty system. It is repeatable, but at the time of making this review, the loot is not scaling up in World Tier 4, so it doesn't really worth doing. Regardless of that, you will probably complete these regularly even just by playing the game. The bounties need roughly 10 points worth of various activities done. Smaller tasks will award you 1 point, and larger, longer activities like going through a full dungeon might give you more like 3 or 5 points. The Nightmare Dungeons are for those players who really enjoyed the endgame Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, and it's basically just you crafting various sigils, and these sigils will transform any dungeon to a much more difficult dungeon. You will get modifiers that are hurting you. You can get like a column that is going after you and try to damage you, so periodically you always need to jump out of the way. Or you get something that floats around you and creates a bubble occasionally, and your goal is basically to jump in there, because if you don't, a giant lightning will hit you. It's interesting, and it scales up to level 100, so this is definitely something that you can do, and you can do them alone later on until you reach the max level. There are some systems though that I actually miss from previous Diablo games, like the ability to go back and do some iconic boss fights. The boss fights of the game were fairly good, but after you finish the main story, you don't really have a chance to play them again, only if you create a new character. So that's something that they should have added. The strong part of the end game is that you come online for like 30 minutes a day or an hour, and you can still get meaningful activity done, and you can advance your character even if you don't have like long hours to play your games. It is suitable for casual players and those with limited time to play. One large system I have not mentioned before was the mounts and horses in game. In Diablo 4 you have access to rideable mounts, and it was a slight disappointment at the beginning because you see the stables right from the beginning, but you only get your first mount in Act 3. I was almost level 53 when I got the quests for the mounts, and I think this was a horrible mistake from Blizzard. I am not even sure what they were thinking here. The mount itself is not really adding any tactical advantage, it's just to travel faster between teleport points. So you could just as well get it at level 10 or something like that. I'm not really sure why it was not added earlier. It's not bad, but if I'm 100% honest, I could probably well spend my time even without mounts. The whole mounting system feels a bit tacked on in the last minute. I don't particularly like it. It's there. I use it since it's there, but I'm not particularly a fan of it. Before Diablo 4 came out, there were some worries that Diablo Immortal will leave its mark on it. Luckily for everyone involved, Blizzard learned from the backlash and understood that a mainline entry to the Diablo franchise cannot have the same scummy, exploitative and immoral microtransaction system as the mobile version. Unfortunately, any large game company nowadays are building these, and we can't seem to get rid of them, no matter how much people protest against these. As a gamer, my perspective is that a full-price game should have full content, and if anything is cut out just for the sole purpose of being sold later on, that's a problem. And it's a problem that the developers create only so they can sell you the solution for that. And that's something that always needs to be called out. Diablo 4 tries to be as user-friendly as it can, but the shadow of predatory microtransaction systems are looming on the horizon for it. Don't forget, the season pass for Diablo 4 will arrive a few weeks after launch. This is normally done so the reviews of the game won't mention additional payments, and the review bodies will exclude the additional spending required from the rating of the game. Unfortunately, we need to be aware of these tactics. As a reviewer, I will point this out, because gaming should be about the artistic merit and the fun primarily. When you start talking about currencies, packs and the like, you start talking about a game. My overall impressions of Diablo 4 are that it's a well-crafted game made by industry professionals who took their time to meticulously put together a consistent, dark, gothic world. It's enjoyable by a wide range of people for a decent enough time, and on that merit alone, the game would deserve a high score. The only real concern I have is the additional monetization part of the game. Most Diablo players are veterans. When they envision the continuation of their favorite game, they were not starting with how much they can spend on it. Despite all the fluff and good things I have mentioned in the review, I've said that the corporate greed is showing through the cracks at some places. Diablo 4 is recommended, but with a side note and a caution. Thank you very much for watching and sticking with me in this review till the end. Let me know down in the comments if you played this game and what you liked, what you didn't. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And see you in the next adventure. Bye bye.